So, hello and welcome to this new episode of Humans of Debate. Today, we are joined by our very, very wonderful guest. Would you want to go ahead, let us know what your name is?
Yeah, I'm Joanne Park.
So, it's so
Um,
nice to meet you. Just a brief introduction of our panel. I am Laurel, and
I'm
then
Kayla.
And I'm Sana.
yes, we will go ahead and start going down our line of questions for today. And Kayla is going to go ahead and kick us off.
All right. So, Joanne, where are you from?
I'm from the Bay Area. When I was in high school, I debated for Archbishop Mitty in San Jose, but right now I'm in New York.
Ooh, so are you, what year of college are you in?
I'm a freshman at Columbia.
Congratulations. That's so exciting. Quick follow-up, if you know, I totally know that many people are undecided in their first year, but what are you looking to study?
That is a good question. I think right now I'm thinking about philosophy and math, with an asterisk on the math bit, depending on how STEM-oriented my brain can be.
I feel that. I feel that. Quick follow-up on your high school debate years. What events have you competed in? What are your favorite events to look back on? Judge if you're in the judge circuit also.
Yeah, so I've competed mostly in circuit LD. I did also a lot of traditional LD. I've done like some speech events like extump and oratory and advocacy. And I've also done parley and like a little bit of college policy a couple of months ago. I'm the most involved in the high school LD circuit, and that's where I do a lot of my judging right now.
How is judging like as a previous competitor? Is it fun?
That is a really good question. I just finished 7 consecutive weeks of it, which I think makes me feel a lot more negatively about it. Yeah, that was not the best decision on my part, but personally, I really like judging with unless it, like obviously diminishing marginal returns. But as a former competitor, I think that after judging, I realized that I've learned a lot more about debate than I thought I would, and I think it makes me like see more of the big picture. And I also kind of like interacting with like the students and being able to talk to them and stuff like that.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, so our first getting into the meat of the interview question is, who is a role model that you look up to?
I guess if you're asking this question in the context of debate, this is the question that I like kind of have to think a little bit about. I'll pick 2 to like cheat out of the question a little bit. The first is sort of like a personal role model and a friend that I have. Her name is Pacey Ann. She went to Stuyvesant and she now goes to NYU. And she was like a lab leader when I went to debate camp, and we're like pretty good friends. And we talked a lot both about debate, about sort of what it means to be a gender minority in LD specifically, and also like we're really good friends. So we talk about like college and life, and she was also a philosophy major, so we talk about that a lot. I think the other role model that I have is also a lab leader that I met, um, Devon Murphy, who's like a very famous person from the college policy circuit. And I think I look up to them a lot because they were really a pioneer in a lot of ways for debate, but also because he's like one of the main reasons why I stuck with debate at a point in my career when I felt like I didn't want to do it anymore. So, yeah, both of them, I guess, just because I think they really exemplify perseverance, and that's something I really needed.
Absolutely. I think that's such a common experience within debate, especially in the virtual sphere, for example. Just sometimes tournaments day in, day out, I guess weekend in, weekend out can be a lot. Was there any particular advice that they gave you when it came to that perseverance, or what was part of their example that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about Devon because I think this is something that I hope that other people can also help to internalize. So I met Devon when I went to camp like for the second time, and I was placed in a lab where I felt like I was miles behind the people I was with because I was not very good like competitively, and I was with some people who would like go on to win the TOC. And I like asked him if I could move down, and every time he would be like, "No, you belong here." And I think I don't know if that's like a piece of advice per se, but like something that I thought about a lot is like what it means to like belong in a space like debate, especially in like the upper competitive echelons. And I think that the more I thought about it, and like now retrospectively thinking about it, like the sort of idea of being able to like be like, yeah, I belong here, even if I'm not like the best, is like a mantra, I guess, that I picked up in debate that helps me a lot.
I can definitely say that in the contrast, like or in a contrasting situation. I definitely wish that I had that when I went to camp, because my situation was exactly the opposite. Like I went to camp for policy, I think the summer before my sophomore year began, and they ended up splitting us into like a lower lab because it was just like the people who had less experience, and I had just finished like my first year of circuit policy, and it was just terrible. And I can definitely say like it helps when people like push you to like I feel like if I was in like the higher lab, or if they didn't even split us up, like it definitely would have been more motivating and made me actually want to stay in policy, because I ended up quitting. Big reveal. But I ended up quitting policy. So yeah, I wow. Like you really got lucky with the
Yeah, I'm
people.
really sorry to hear. And I think
Oh
like
no, it's cool. Like I probably would have quit policy anyways because it's kind of stressful, but yeah.
that's fair. Policy is very stressful. I think even as an educator, like thinking about sort of like what it means to like mingle people of like slightly different skill levels, I think it like kind of makes a lot of sense to have people who are really good be with people who have slightly less experience, because I think it makes everyone a lot better to be able to learn in that kind of setting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that message is so meaningful. Like the fact that, you know, especially as somebody with a lot less experience, maybe feeling like kind of an imposter or feeling like you don't belong in this place where you do belong. But, you know, you need somebody to kind of tell you that if you're new to the area, especially, you know, when debate can sometimes be such a toxic space. But speaking of issues like that, Joanne, what do you think is like the biggest challenge that, you know, women or non-binary folks or marginalized groups face in speech and debate?
I think that well, I guess I'll speak a little bit about things that might be a little bit specific to Circuit LD, potentially policy, but I think that I guess this isn't like a particularly surprising answer, but I think there is a pretty big issue with like people not being taken seriously, or sort of individual experiences being really easily trivialized. The reason why I say this might be indexed to LD and policy is because specifically with questions of gender identity, or like sort of issues like misogyny, because there's so much kind of like objective critical theory literature surrounding it, everyone can feel like an expert. And I think maybe like there's like some kind of sense of like someone like mansplaining what it means to be a non-binary person and what it means to be a woman in debate to you. And I think that gets a lot worse when people feel like they understand so they can kind of talk around you, when in reality there are a lot of like individual sort of microaggressive situations you can be placed into. And I think that it's really difficult, especially for people who are gender minorities who are competing around people who are not gender minorities, to feel like it's even something worth being upset about, or whether like these specific situations, like in those situations, whether like that person was overreacting. And I guess like I'm lucky I was surrounded by a lot of like gender minorities when I competed, but I think it's still pretty difficult to kind of get over the idea that like you're overreacting when it's just debate, or when debate is so much more progressive than any other space, which I maybe it's true, but it's definitely not true enough.
I totally agree. That's I like, as somebody in the Circuit LD space, that's like something that happens so often. Like I can name literally dozens of times, even though it's just my first year, that I've been in a round where a dude will explain, like I'll be reading like a feminism argument, and this dude will try to like re-explain it back to me in a way that's just, you know, it's like these little things that just keep building up, and you feel like if you were to bring if you feel like you're addressing those things, you feel like it's too much, or that it's not really worth mentioning, or like you said, it's not worth talking about. So I think, yeah, that's definitely true.
I definitely think that exemplifies a sort of dichotomy about the debate space. Because, you know, on one hand, you're feeling the need to tell yourself, oh, it's just an extracurricular. But on the other hand, because it's an extracurricular that so many people make a huge part of their life, it's so valid and it's so true that any microaggression, really any aggression at all that builds up, is real. And it's such a shame that in a space that is supposedly supposed to be such a progressive area where everyone has to have a voice, that that's not the reality, that people feel that they are being silenced, which I think is something that really in any form in the debate community has to be addressed. And it's something that starts with definitely individual people building up and like finding the positives, because like we've talked about already, it takes so much perseverance to go through it and overcome it. And really talking about overcoming, what would you say has been your proudest moment in speech and debate? whether as a judge, as a competitor, both, what's something that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I guess I do have a moment in mind. I think that when it happened, it was certainly very far from my proudest moment. And I'll be a little bit vague about it because I think some people might know like the specific thing that happened that I'm talking about. Before my senior year, I went to debate camp and I competed at the camp tournament. And it was like some late elam of the camp tournament I was in. There were like 70 to 80 people watching this round, which I think was way too many. But I was debating someone who was very good, very successful, very talented, like straight white man debater. And I guess in during the duration of the round, something happened that like made me feel really uncomfortable, or like he said something to me that like made me really upset. And I guess anyone who knows me personally knows that I'm not like a particularly emotional person, or I really don't like express those kinds of things in round. But I guess this because so many people were watching in the middle of the 2AR, I started like sobbing, and like it was like a big deal because I was trying to point out that this person should lose solely for like saying this kind of thing, which again is like not really an argument that I'm comfortable with. And afterwards, I just kind of had like a big like I freaked out. I like ran out of the room, and I really was not proud of myself in that moment. But I guess afterwards, a couple of like younger debaters that I had not met before kind of came up and talked to me and were like, uh, I really appreciated that you said those things. I was really glad that you said that. Like, thank you for being vulnerable. And I guess when like people said that to me, I like felt kind of like a fraud because I didn't think I was, doing anything by being vulnerable. But I think I'm like proud of that in retrospect because although I would not have like, I wouldn't like choose to repeat that moment by any means. I think it's a moment in my career where, and I guess I'll like ramble a little bit more, where I feel like there are other moments in my career where something similar to that happened to me or someone I knew, and I just was very passive about it. Or I felt like I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, and I would just kind of let things fly. And I guess to me, like when things happened to me personally, I didn't really feel that bad about it. But there are moments where I like regrettably like heard something about someone else and kind of let it slide. So I guess I'm proud of that moment because I think that's when I kind of broke that tradition of passivity that I had, burdened myself with. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think in such a space where like there's almost a dichotomy of like males being praised for being aggressive and then females, non-binary, anyone who doesn't fall under the category of male is almost when they're aggressive, it's almost seen as something that's wrong, but then you have it being praised for the opposite. And I think in situations like that, breaking the mold and being vulnerable and showing that emotion in retrospect, moving forward, really in any place, showing that emotion, not only does it show humanity, but I think it also shows a really big amount of progress that needs to be made in our community.
I
Absolutely.
totally.
And oh,
Oh
I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no,
Go
you
go
go ahead.
ahead, Kayla. Go
No, you
ahead.
go ahead. No, no, no,
Yeah.
okay.
No, I was just gonna say that that's really inspiring because when I read the question originally, like proudest moment, I thought I was expecting an answer like, oh, I won this tournament or I did this, but I feel like listening to this was so like I don't know, refreshing in a sense, especially because it was such a vulnerable moment, but it was a moment of self growth for you in a way where you were like where you recognize like a lot later, which I think is the like the best part is like in that moment you didn't think that it was a great moment for you, but afterwards you were like you recognized that you weren't as vulnerable before and you were able to just kind of go. I just find that really cool that you were able to kind of reflect on that like that.
Thank you.
I was going to say that in policy, looking back, my favorite rounds that I got to watch were definitely the ones where people got like more, I guess they cared more and you could definitely tell they were more passionate about the arguments that they were saying, because in a lot of times in debate, not just policy, but I think this goes across the board, honestly, is like most of the rounds that people walk in and they're just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna say these arguments and like respond like this. Like it almost feels like a routine. And when you break that routine and like stuff happens and people actually show that they care about what they're saying, it definitely, I would say, causes an impact a lot. Like there was this one round where that I was watching at the Meadows tournament last year, and I was watching my team because I was just shadowing them. and there was this girl on the other team who ended up running a femk, and you see that like quite a bit in policy, but just like the angle that she had of it and the way that you could tell that she was like actually arguing it because she cared about it, like that was definitely one of the moments that stuck with me even now, just like not even being an ex policy debater, like that moment still sticks with me, because like when people argue about the things they actually genuinely care about and are passionate about, it changes like the whole debate, and it really like causes an impact, not just like for the person with the self-growth, but also like everybody watching and the other team and the judge even, like it's just really cool to watch.
Yeah, I guess
So
one
with
thing I
that, our
will.
oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I can add something like for a little bit. One thing I do want to say, or something that I like reflected on this moment and a lot, and I do feel like an ideal version of debate would allow people to be passionate about things that they want to be passionate about, but also like never pressure anyone who like feels like they're some kind like a gender minority or racial minority, like all of that, to feel pressure to like make themselves vulnerable in order to like make their arguments heard, or like there is some kind of pressure to like perform in a certain way or like get really passionate because you're reading X type of argument. And I think like in certain spaces it's like pretty cathartic to distance yourself a little bit or to like make arguments that are not attached to your identity. So I think like the best model of debate that unfortunately does not exist right now like gives people the choice to kind of like be vulnerable if they want to, but to divorce themselves from that if they want to as well.
I 100% agree, because when I first started debating, I'm a woman of color, and I have this one cis white male debater friend who was in my year, and I had over the summer I had learned a couple arguments, and then he was like, what's your favorite one?" And then before I could answer, he was like, "Do you like critiques?" I was like, "Oh my goodness, like do I have the space to even?" Well, the answer is yes, I do prefer to read critical arguments, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's because I'm a woman of color. It's because I like the argument. And I could very, just as much I would like to read a policy argument or read theory or something like that. But I feel like you said, we're kind of expected to, now that an argument has been like critiques have been made for people of color in the debate space, it's like you have to read them, but that's absolutely not true. So that's also a little something I
Yeah.
wanted to add because I thought it was so important.
All right, our next question is what is the biggest factor that had helped you succeed in speech and debate?
I think that this is a good question. My most immediate answer is I think the thing that helped me the most was I really don't like this word. It's networking because I feel like it has some other connotations that are like, like people sort of actively reaching out or like talking to people for the mere means of like trying to get better at speech and debate. But I do think like it's like the people that I met and being able to work with people that I met that helped me the most in succeeding. I guess I think this might answer another question that pops up later on. So apologies for hijacking the line of questioning. But basically when I first started out in doing circuit debate my sophomore year at my school, we have a huge speech and debate program, but we have we had like a non-existent circuit LD program. So I just spent a lot of time trying to figure out this like big monster of circuit debate. And initially I didn't really have any varsity teammates that I could ask for advice from. I didn't have any like teammates who were like as into it as I was. So I had to like meet people. I was very lucky. I got to go to camp and I like met people from camp that were from like all across the country, and I like did prep with them and they would like teach me arguments, and every year I would like build my relationship with these people that I met from camp, from tournaments, etc. And like there are a couple of people, like 3 to 4 people that I worked with at the very beginning of my career who are from like the other side of the country that I continued to prep with until their career or like careers ended together our senior year. So yeah, I think the thing that helped me the most were like the people that I worked with, because I certainly don't think that I could have been able to take on this beast of speech and debate, especially circuit debate, by myself.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, I feel like that kind of those relationships you have with other people, especially as you're starting out as a novice. And I totally relate not having, a school that has a circuit debate like kind of community, and like you said, it is really a monster. Like there's so many things you just don't know, and it's like every time you learn a new thing, there's something else you forgot. And I feel like, yeah, that's totally valid, and I feel like that's something we all relate to. It's like it's the people around us in this community that foster this growth, and they teach us that kind of helps us grow.
I definitely agree. I will say that the reason that kept me in speech and debate was definitely other people. Even in my first year when I was just like not, like you're not a super experienced competitor, especially if you have never seen speech and debate ever in your life, and then freshman
Yeah.
year, like you decide to do it. I will definitely say, like, even at a small school that doesn't really have a big team, that doesn't have a ton of resources, and just like the district that doesn't have a lot of resources in general, like the people genuinely make it what it is. Like it's not really, it's like I think that there's an aspect to debate where everybody loves the competitiveness, where everybody strives to be like the top of the competition, of course. But I think the thing that really makes speech and debate what it is the community, and like learning from other people and being able to experience like situations with other people and having moments, and just I just love this activity so much just for everybody in it. And I think that without the community that has grown from it, it definitely would not be the same.
For sure. And I think the beauty of it all is no matter the size of your circuit, there's always a community there. Like coming from South Carolina myself, we're very small when it comes to like the size of our district. And I think even though we're a super small district, like I've still met people from the so many schools that are participating that I'm friends with. Their alumni have graduated, but it's still there and there's still that connection. And that is definitely the beauty of it. I 100% agree.
Absolutely. So Joanne, we're gonna kind of, I know we're talking about great things there, but we just wanted to ask, are there or were there like any difficult decisions that you faced in your career or any challenges in particular that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I guess this is what I meant when I said I like kind of hijacked the line of questioning. I do think the biggest thing that I sort of struggled with was trying to build a team, because there are like quite a few circuit debaters at MIDI now, while also trying to pursue competitive goals that I had for myself and trying to figure out like how much could I focus on myself without being selfish slash like how much energy did I have left to, devote to my team. And I think like at this point, I really can't take credit for the things that MIDI Circuit LD is doing because I think a lot of it is propelled by the people who are on the team now. But I do think that it did contribute to a very large sense of imposter syndrome. So I was like not very sort of like traditionally circuit debate competitively successful, e.g. with like bids and all of that until my senior year. And my senior year, I kind of like found myself doing a lot better than I had in years before. And I think when that happened, I felt like I was being propelled into like these, I guess, like friend groups or circles of debaters who are a lot better than me and who had like a lot more, success. And at the same time had these like huge institutional programs that were backing them up. And I think like a lot of them are my friends and I really cherish them now as well. But I felt like I didn't belong as much because I like had this like additional burden of like my like DIY homemade team that I was carrying with me. And that kind of almost felt like something that I always had to deal with that none of my other friends in that sense did. And like I guess that sort of line of thinking that I had when I was, going through this was a bit immature in the sense that like the people I was working with, my teammates, they were also my friends and they were also people I cherished. And they were also people who understand what I was like, doing. But there were a lot of points in my career, especially like the end of my sophomore year slash the beginning of my junior year, when I saw a lot of those friends like do really well. And I felt like I was lagging behind, where I wondered like, was it really worth it to be, trying to like try and build a program by myself, and also like try and learn circuit debate for myself, which, is, as we've mentioned before, like a difficult feat given how much stuff it entails.
I definitely freaking feel you on this one because I went through something pretty similar to that situation at the beginning of this year where I was trying to like be the parental figure of my team for all of like the novices, and it genuinely is very difficult to find like a balance between that, especially when you're also competitive on the national level and not just like going to the local tournaments with your novices and the other people in your team. um and I think that at least in like the general scope, what helps me get through that was just kind of like realizing that it's okay if you have your little homemade team and you go to like these big national tournaments, because at the end of the day, like I also feel like to some capacity, when you start competing on the national level, like you are expected to make friends who are also competing on the national level from like other places. But I think that it makes it even more fun when you go to those tournaments with your friends and like the people that you go to school with on your own team, especially when you had to like build the program yourself, which is also very impressive. Like, good on you. Like, that's very hard to do. I think that it makes it even more fun to like go to those places, or not places, because obviously we're online now. And you just have like your own little support group.
Yeah.
But
And I guess I'll add
absolutely.
that. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, you're totally
Oh,
good.
I guess I'll just add that I am very like grateful to the people that I was like working with, and I coach them now because I coach MIDI. And like it wasn't really like a one-man job, it was very much like a team effort, and I think that it was really a lot of their support and like the friendships that I had with them that sort of carried me through my career.
Absolutely. I just have to say, like, mad respect because I think building a program, keeping a program going, and not only that, but also competing regularly, competing on a national level is so much to balance. And that's really, really such an amazing, like honestly inspiring journey to hear about. So to probe in that journey a little bit further, we were just wondering if you could start your journey in speech and debate over again from day one as a novice. Is there anything that you do differently from before, or would you keep it exactly the same?
Well, I definitely don't think I'd keep it exactly the same. Um, I'm gonna try and isolate something specific that I wish I'd done differently. I think that I guess this is the answer is kind of generic, but I think I'll explain my way out of it. Is to like be less afraid of the people in speech and debate, because I think, sort of as part of the imposter syndrome that I felt like that I kind of still have to this day. I had like a huge fear of talking to people that I perceived were in any way better at debate than I was. I avoided them. I felt like I didn't deserve to talk to them, and I felt like in a way I'd be wasting their time. And I think that is probably like the worst mentality that I could have had, and that I think anyone can have in speech and debate, is to like create an implicit hierarchy in your brain of like, this person has X many more career bids than me, or this person has X many more local tournament successes than me, ergo they're better than me as a person. And I think like I guess the reason why this isn't like I think I did figure it out towards the end, or rather like people figured it out for me. There are a lot of moments where like people who are really successful, like the role models that I mentioned who are both very, very talented at debate, and like some of the friends that I made like my junior year are people who were and are miles better at debate and like have thought a lot more about the activity than I have. But like in a lot of situations they approached me first. They established like a friendship, and I felt like very like I felt like almost like a celebrity. And I think there is kind of this like hero idol worship culture in debate that I definitely, like, as you can see, struggled with. But I think a lot of people also participate in slash struggle with slash are hurt by in the debate community, just because there is such a big thing about like this person is so good at debate, they're like a god. And I think getting rid of that mentality is really important, because I think if I had done that much earlier in my career, um, I would have felt I think I would have like had been a lot less harsh on myself about like, you know, making friendships in debate, like building relationships with people in debate. But also I think it would have helped me like view debate in a much more healthy way. And like the final thing I guess I have to add to this is like, in retrospect now, also like since I've been friends with a lot of these people, and also because I think I've been in a position where I've like been really good friends with someone who told me like I was intimidated by you. uh I don't really think anyone in debate like has that kind of hierarchical
Hmm.
mentality, or like anyone who's in like the upper echelons of debate like really thinks they're there. Everyone thinks that there's someone out there who's better at the debate than them, which is, you know, true. So it is really like a made up mentality that, you know, unfortunately persists in a lot of people, that is pretty difficult to overcome.
I totally feel you on this one as well. I think that especially I'm speaking more from like the perspective of the speech world now that that's like work I've kind of ventured myself into, but it obviously still applies to debate. Is like you watch people, especially when you are like junior, sophomore, like even senior, and you like go on the NSDA website and you like watch the final round videos, and then you like see those people in round or at a tournament and you just like get so intimidated. I think that it definitely is a thing that like people are so intimidated by like this hierarchy that for some reason exists even though it shouldn't, um of just like, you know, mingling with people and getting to know like the people that you're competing against. And I also have weirdly experienced this as well this year. Is just like figuring out like well, mine was more like I come from a very small school, and then all of a sudden like I was starting to compete now. Very strange to like it was like broaden my scope of people that I would know. And I think that the whole like idea that the people who are at the top don't even know that they're there is so true, because there's this one girl who made it to finals in interp event in the 2020 tournament, and I was so scared to talk to her, and all of a sudden like we're best friends now. Like it's really just, it's such a weird thing in speech and debate to like have that whole hierarchy thing of like, oh, this person is better than me, like I can't even talk to them, because it's just like they're teenagers as well. Like we're all high schoolers, we all want to make friends, and preferably lifelong friends for a lot of people. Like this is where a lot of people end up finding themselves and who they want to talk to and who they want to bring along with them in life. Like I think that it really robs you of that opportunity when you get like stuck into that mindset, and that's definitely something that's super hard to overcome, especially in a competitive activity when you're like, oh, that person like won this tournament, like, oh god, I can't talk to them ever again.
I literally had the exact same experience with an extemp national finalist from last year. We were in like a prep room for break grounds a couple weeks ago together, and we were the only two people there. And so like she unmuted, turned on her camera, and she was like, "Hey, Laurel," and I was like, "Oh my gosh." She's talking to me. And it was so exciting to me because it was kind of like, wow, like we are just high school students. Like we're all coming from the same situation. We're all coming from the same like just life circumstance of, oh, we decided to dedicate our high school careers to speech and debate. And I think it's so amazing to always recognize like the universality of the experience. Like this is something that everyone is enduring, like the ups, the downs, whatever it may be. Speech and debate is such almost a universal experience. And I think I totally agree with you when you say like removing that like hero idol worship situation, just being like, hey, this is someone in exactly the same shoes as me, is something that really I hadn't even considered until we hopped on this call today. But now it makes so much sense. Like absolutely.
Especially when you go to like a lot of tournaments with these people. Like there's some people who just straight up do like don't even have local tournaments or don't go to them and just like do national level only, and that's like, wow, like mad props to you. But it's just like, especially when you're constantly in that setting and you have these people who are like idolized and like seen as heroes of the activity, and then you meet them and it's just kind of like, wow, we really are all just like doing this together, you know. I think that I think that having that moment of like realization, like, oh, we are literally just all on this same level doing the same thing, and like they just happen to make it farther than I did or other people did. It's like it really humanizes people. You don't really see them anymore as just like heroes or like for their accomplishments, like you said, like a celebrity. Like you really start to see them as just another person like competing as well. Speaking of difficult things, or and like the journey of being a novice and mindsets, what would you say is a good mindset to approach speech and debate with?
This is again a really good question. I think my answer will probably be something along the lines of balance slash moderation. I think that it is it's very easy to fall into like an either or situation with speech and debate. The first is like a very like emotional, mental, like attachment to speech and debate where you feel like your entire life depends on it or that your entire personality depends on it, and you find yourself only being able to sort of be in these kinds of spaces. And the opposite is kind of a big repulsion where you like have a negative experience and you're totally turned off and you're like, I never want to engage with speech and debate ever again. And I think that polarity is really damaging. Because I think it is a very productive space to be in despite its flaws. But I also think that there are, obvious problems to like kind of being addicted to speech and debate in a sense. And I guess anyone who knows me like knows it's cheap coming from me because guess who just judged 7 weeks of tournaments like while being in college. But I think that it's good to sort of understand speech and debate, I guess, as we mentioned before, is like just another extracurricular, not something that defines your whole existence by any means, but just like something else that you're doing because it enriches your life. And I think that mindset is very difficult to get to if you're competing because like anyone who has like a little bit of a competitive like drive it's really hard to get out of that, and it's really hard to like feel like it's only an activity or it's only a thing that you're doing on the side because you really are spending a lot of time doing it. And you should never trivialize that work by any means. But I guess like having graduated and seeing things from a bit of a bird's eye view, uh, like, it's important to have a life outside of speech and debate, to take care of yourself outside of speech and debate, to like, make sure that you're doing the basics for your health and for your wellness. And I think that I think those skills can only happen if you start to treat speech and debate as something that is not like an intrinsic part of you, but instead something that you simply enjoy doing and that you enjoy sharing with other people. And I think that, comes from having this sort of moderate relationship, not going to a tournament every weekend, I guess, for me, not judging every single weekend. And also, I guess, like the corollary to this is uh, speaking from personal experience, basically 99% of the friendships that I have today are people who are in speech and debate. And I recently had a conversation with someone that was also like my debate partner for college debate, who I like debated a lot when I was in high school. And we were talking, and he sort of sent me this like proposal, basically, like sent me a document that was like, I think that when we call, every time we call, we should bring 5 things not related to debate to talk about. And we've been like enforcing this rule. It's really funny because like the proposal was in the form of a counter plan, whatever. We're silly, we're debate nerds. But it's like, it's been really helpful. And I think that the relationship that you build in speech and debate should also not be anchored to speech and debate. They should be people that you've met in debate, that you have shared this experience with, that you care about as people, not like debaters that I'm friends with. Because I think there is a difference. And I think that difference is kind of difficult to see when you're like spending all of your every waking moment thinking about debate, which is like totally possible. And that's something definitely that I fell into a lot.
Joanne, you took the words right out of my. I don't know if it's because you did Circuit LD, but I feel like I've literally experienced and thought like all of the things that you literally just said. It's insane. Like, it's crazy. Let me start from the beginning because but I feel like when you talked about being addicted to debate, I was literally having this conversation with my mom like 3 days ago about how like when you're debating and when you're doing well in terms of, let's just say, competitiveness, like getting bids or winning tournaments, it feels so good. It's like this feeling you can't get rid of, and it's like you want more of it because you're climbing, like you said, like these echelons of debate where you are suddenly becoming important. But when you're not doing well, it's such a crushing blow, and it's insane because at this point you've devoted so much of your life, your time, your personality to this activity, and when it's not giving you the results that you want, it feels like it's all for nothing. And I'm like, that's and I know this is your interview, but this is a short personal story. I promise it won't be too long. But near the beginning of this year, when I did start Circuit LD, I used to do a lot of traditional local debate, especially in middle school. So that was a lot easier. There weren't very nuanced arguments. It was pretty straightforward. But at the beginning of this year, especially since I'm such a competitive person, I saw this community, I saw this space, and I was like, I want to take this, I want to pretty much grab it and figure out everything I can. But it's mentally, emotionally, it's taxing. Like, and I noticed I didn't notice at the time, but I started devoting literally all of my time, my personality, my well-being to Circuit LD because I was around people that were great at it, and I was like, I just need to be the best at this activity, even though I'd only started within a couple months. And I had a pretty bad experience at this one tournament where I didn't do well, and then I kind of sat down, I reflected, and I realized that I spent like pretty much I'd cut off. I wasn't talking to a lot of my friends, I wasn't talking to my family, and it was I just devoted all of this time to this activity, realizing that at the end of the day, it was only an extracurricular. You know what I mean? So it's like it's crazy the way you talk about it because it's like that's exactly it, it's such great advice. I wish I wish we talked a couple months ago, but that you want to make sure that it's not so like you said intrinsic to your personality where it's like it's ride or die with debate. It's like if I bid at this tournament, only then am I a worthy person or am I allowed to, relax even. It's like we need to remember that debate is just like, it's even though we enjoy doing it and like you said, like we can't trivialize the work and dedication we put into debate, but we can't enlarge it to this point of like no return where it's like debate is everything and if I'm not doing debate then I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry, that was long, but I totally resonated with it, so I just had to bring it up.
That that resonates with me too. As a senior with like 3 tournaments left in my season, like it's kind of like, a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, Laurel, what are you gonna do now that there's no debate? Like once you graduate?" Because as someone who's been in debate for like 4 years, who's like dived in since like her freshman year, it's definitely something that has become such a huge part of me. And now to be faced with all those questions of like, "Oh, well, what are you gonna do without debate?" It's kind of like debate doesn't have to be your whole identity. It's like you said, it's something that you enjoy and it's something that you love to participate in, but it's not like who you are as a person. Obviously, you're going to take away amazing skills and amazing friends from it, but it's also something that is important to recognize as individuals like ourselves, but also for our communities around us to be like, okay, this person does debate. They're not debate itself. And I think that's a distinction that's so, so key. And I'm so glad we talked about it.
I definitely like am in the same boat as y'all. And it's honestly kind of eye-opening to see how like universal this is. Because like I was also experiencing something very similar to this in the beginning of the year where I was just like, this is everything, like this is my life. And then you kind of just like start to get out of the groove of like competing every weekend. Like maybe you have like an off weekend and you're like, wow, I can spend my time doing other things than just like speaking debate. And you just have like that moment where you're like, wow, there's a life outside of this, huh, strange. But I think that the whole thing about like chasing competitive success because of like how good it feels and then the fallout of it when you don't do very well is like very interesting to hear about because on the contrary, at the beginning of the year, like as soon like I ended up like experiencing some success and then I was like this like I think a lot of people think that becoming a champion or becoming like a finalist or like an outrounder in debate or speech like will change you in some way and like that it'll like give you a new identity or make you have like some kind of revelation and it really just doesn't like it really makes you like truly realize like this is literally just an activity and it obviously is an activity that means a lot to people. Like I will not denounce that. It is very important to so many people. But it really like is not like a lifestyle, if that makes sense. Like it's not something that you spend your whole life doing, or it's like your whole life spending and devoting so much time to.
Totally. So we did give a lot of advice there. But Joanne, just to kind of end off the interview, even though you've already given us a lot of golden words of wisdom, what do you think is, or like, what would you like to say, or what advice do you think that you would give to young women, non-binary debaters, marginalized communities in debate who are like just starting off, like novices?
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of similar to the thing that I just said about balance, but I guess it's perhaps a little bit more specific to people who feel like, in a lot of ways, their identity sort of implicates the way that they interact in this space, and it's to know your limits. And also to, I guess, like, this kind of comes in two parts. First is to, like, know your limits, like, individually with debate, with, like, understand that you can take breaks sometimes, understand that you can distance yourself from the activity. But I also think, like, all of us kind of talked about, like, the ways you can do that, what it means to not do that in debate. So I won't, like, get too much into that. But I also think that there is kind of a tendency, in addition to the thing I said before about like sometimes you feel like your experiences are being trivialized. Sometimes it's the opposite. And sometimes it is the fact that like your voices, your experiences are commodified in debate, or they're like over amplified, or you're kind of expected, I think, as was said before, to like, you know, debate in a particular way, say a particular thing because you are of a particular identity group. And I think it's important to know that like you don't have to take on that emotional burden, because it is an emotional burden, and like the people who do it are doing like work, and that work is something that you should be like looking up to them for. But I don't, not everyone like has to put themselves in a situation where they have to do that work for other people. And I think that that's like really difficult, because when you, I think in a lot of ways, like if you experience something in debate, something negative because of something about your identity, a lot of people sort of feel this like need to do something about it. And I think that is sort of pretty like a pretty natural response to like something negative being done to you, is I don't want anyone else to ever feel this way in debate. And I think, you know, if you feel that inclination, you should do what you feel is right to kind of combat that. But I also think it's okay to, for your reaction to a moment like that to be like, well, that was negative, but I need to take some time for myself to process it, or I need to take some time for myself to take a break from this activity. And I think especially if you're just starting off, it's really easy to try and do anything to make debate like your home, or to try and belong in debate. And I think that because of that, you feel like you should put in 120% of your energy and your life into this activity. And I think it is okay to have like a, you know, like a on and off relationship with debate, if that makes sense. And to, you know, you can always come back, especially towards the end of your career, when you have a little bit more big picture, when you have much more of a big picture about what debate looks like, to start doing that work. But by no means should anyone's like career in debate be characterized by a compulsory need to, you know, do like make the debate space better, because that's not always that responsibility should never fall on anyone to make debate better, because it should be better, but like not off the backs of people who don't want to put in that work.
I totally agree. And I feel like that also applies in so many other situations that aren't related to debate. Like, for example, it seems like marginalized folks are always just kind of, it seems like they're required, or what's the word? Obligated to educate folks that, you know, and put in that emotional labor all the time. And, you know, there'll be folks that, you know, they want to be educated, but it's like, if you don't want the burden to be put on your back, it shouldn't have to be there. Like, I shouldn't have to educate you just because I am a woman of color. Like, this is like not really related to debate, but like in situations like that, when people want to be educated about a specific thing, it's like a lot of times people specifically will be asked and just expected to put in that emotional labor when things like Google exist. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of times we, and like you said, I think this is super true in the debate space, where it's like certain folks are somehow obligated in the debate space to do this educating, but it really shouldn't have to be like that. So totally
I
agree.
also think that I guess to add to that, or maybe like offer a different dimension, I think it also happens competitively where but maybe this is a kind of a tangent, so I'm sorry, because that was a really good point. But it's also just like um, in a lot of spaces, the way that the accomplishments of people who are minorities in debate are celebrated is indexed to their identity. So a really good non-male debater, a really good like uh, I guess like racial minority debater, and I think that should never sort of put an asterisk on someone's competitive success. I think it happens all of the time. And I think it has to do a lot with the fact that, like, you know, traditional celebrations of success don't include those people. But I think it's okay for, and I think people should start thinking about their success in terms of like, I am a good debater, not like, I am a good woman debater. I'm a good, like other gender minority debater, racial minority debater, because you can just be a good debater and like not have your success be um, you know, indexed to your identity.
Absolutely. Literally, I'm speechless. I've had that feeling in general, like, you know, in society, in debate, wherever you name it. I've never been able to put it into words. I think that just encapsulates it perfectly. Like, your success is your success. There's no asterisks on it. And that just could not be more true.
I also definitely totally 100,000% agree. Like, especially, I think that this is this becomes more of a, I don't know what the word is, but like you see it a lot on the national level as well. Like, oh, this person is a really good like Black debater. Like I've been in a round where someone has told me that, and I'm like, okay, like I don't know how you're like, how are you supposed to take that? Like, it just sucks when people try to attach like your identity to your success, because it's like your success is independent of that, and like obviously is it a lot of people are affected by that success because of their identity, because of like the sucky world that we live in, and because like debate does often breed marginalization in certain rounds. But like I think that it's so important to just realize like, yeah, like as y'all already said, like this is my success, not necessarily like this is my success as like a Black person or as a non-binary person or as a woman or like X like marginalized group that applies to you. Like it's just so important to like own that success, not because of your identity or like the situation that you're in it, or but because like you got there. And oh shoot, there was another thing that you brought up earlier that I wanted to talk about, but now I don't remember what it was. Oh well, it's fine.
All right. Well, that does bring us to our end of our Humans of Debate interview questions. Most importantly, we just want to say thank you so much, Joanne, for this conversation. It has been absolutely amazing. Literally the most true. Like it's just covered so much so well, and we're so grateful to have been able to have you on this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And this discussion was really productive for me as well. And I think it really helps to like, understand that the things that you felt in debate are being felt by other people in debate. And it's really validating. And I'm like really glad to be in this space.
110%. We're so glad to have you in it. So again, thank you so much, and